Hey, what's up, guys? Tug Morkel speaking here. Um, Tug's Trek. I'm going to read from chapter 8 today. Chapter 8 is entitled The Rhodesian SAS. And considering it was a large part of my life, uh, the chapter's quite long, so I'm going to divide it into 7 or 8 sections. Otherwise, it becomes too long. Hope you enjoy. I enjoy it as much as I have a few nightmares about it. As time goes on through cognitive behavioral therapy and revisiting the moments that used to be nightmares, those nightmares are not disappearing, but I'm able to deal with them a whole lot better. So here we go, Chapter 8, Rhodesian SAS. Mark those words. Before I knew it, my taxing military training and final selection ended. From my class at Guinea Fowl, 4 of us passed. Chaucer, Jack Dog, Woolskin, and I eventually made it into the squadron. We were now ready to become operational with the Rhodesian SAS. Elections had been held, and Ian Smith was in the process of handing over power to Abel Muzarewa, a veteran politician and clergyman, leader of the United African National Council. By compromise, it would have been agreed to rename the country Zimbabwe Rhodesia. Muzarewa's support base was primarily in the urban areas, and he controlled a militia group who became Security Force Auxiliaries. Defense and security spending had surged rapidly in view of UDI, and since the onset of the 1972 farm attacks in Centenary had gone off the charts in the late 1970s. An estimate of the budget for the 1979-80 introduced by the ill-fated Zimbabwe Rhodesia government was to increase the military superiority of the armed forces. It became a war budget and was confirmed later in July 1979 as such. Propaganda spread through enemy publications such as the Zimbabwe People's Voice, a Zanla mouthpiece published by a sympathetic Scandinavian government. This tabloid trash held the Rhodesian Zulu Scouts accountable for atrocities conducted by Zanla and Zipra on the local population. The hope of a peaceful and lasting transition to majority rule through the internal settlement proved to be quite the opposite and saw a massive escalation of insurgents and hostilities with the consequent increased demands on an already overstretched Rhodesian army. I had arrived at a time when the war was at its height and the fighting at its most intense, and although I was technically highly trained in the academic art of war, nothing could have prepared me for the reality of it. Once assigned to our fighting groups, deployment was immediate and time for reflection was past. On my first military operation, we set off for Grand Reef, a forward airfield base near the Mozambique border in the eastern highlands of Rhodesia. Upon arrival at the airfield, we were met by a corporal who briefed us on a deep penetration ambush into Mozambique and gave us the news that one of my close friends from school and training troop assigned to another squadron had been killed in action the day before. I had turned 19 only a week earlier. His father was so heartbroken that latterly he wanted us to take him to the place where Chaucer had died. We could not take him back into Mozambique, given the circumstances, and Mr. Hartley could never comprehend why. The loss of a child in what some parents were beginning to accept as a futile war was the worst trauma a person could experience. Many parents blamed themselves for the relentless conflict. Our mission was to ambush a Zanla vehicle convoy carrying the elusive Rex Nongor. We would parachute into the neighboring Manica province, close to the road linking the port of Beira to the capital Maputo. Grief, anger, and apprehension came together to give me enthusiasm for the opportunity of engaging Robert Mugabe's insurgents. By the time we'd received our final briefing, it was dark, and we kitted up in a hangar and marched out to the trusty Dakota workhorse for the start of my first real military operation. There were 16 of us, and my personal instructions were to take orders from the NCOs and lay down as much fire into the killing zone as possible once the contact had been initiated. I carried an RPD. It was a brilliant Russian-made light machine gun. Soon we were airborne, and I would jump second from last. The flight seemed to take forever as the DAC droned on through the night, and my thought process a combination of anxiety, excitement, and raw fear. Like a virgin on a honeymoon, not really knowing what to expect. My preoccupied mind was brought into an abrupt focus on reality as we were soon told to prepare for action. We stood and sounded out our regiment, our equipment checks, I beg your pardon. Action stations, shouted the flight sergeant. Stand in the door. As the pilot eased up on the throttle, I could hear the engines of the aircraft slowing down. Go, go, go. Keeping close to the guy in front of me, I inched forward as the troops jumped out. Out I went into the cool night of early June. I looked up and saw my open canopy. I released my Bergen quickly, and within seconds the treetops were at my feet. I crashed through branches and came to an abrupt halt as my canopy became snarled in the foliage. I was suspended 20 feet above the ground, like a toy on a string, and a sense of panic engulfed me when I realized I was unable to move. I do not know how long I stayed dangling there before I was located and talked through the motions of getting myself released. It seemed like an exceedingly long time, and I was thankful for the light of a good moon. I released my Bergen, letting it drop to the ground, and then started swinging myself like a pendulum, giving momentum to get a grip and footing in the branches of the tree holding me captive. Finally, I managed to grab it and then cut the rigging lines and broke free of my harness. I shinned down the tree and dropped to the ground, much relieved at the feel of solid ground beneath my boots. We pulled the canopy from the tree and got it rolled up as our call sign commander led the slog through the night towards our objective. Having marched through most of the rest of the night, we arrived at the target area and soon settled into our designated positions of concealment. We kept low and incredibly quiet for the whole of the next day, while a reconnaissance party went looking for a more suitable ambush location. That evening, we moved stealthily away from our lie position and walked for about an hour before reaching the selected killing ground, and the wait began. At night, it was freezing cold, and during the day, uncomfortably hot. Under the heat of the tropical sun, we were invaded by swarms of mapani flies, a tiny flying insect with an unhealthy appetite for eye fluid. They attack in swarms of endless relays, buzzing around within inches of the eyes, and I passed the time killing as many of the horrid little creatures as I could. Time dragged on, and my patience was put to the test. The veterans among us reminded we could be there for weeks before our target appeared, and there was always the possibility it would not arrive at all. Not on this occasion. A few days into our vigil, our early warning radioed in, and things started to happen. A shout of "Target!" from the officer leading us had all us scurrying for position. It was close to sunset, and the timing could not have been more perfect. As the first troop carrier came into view up a slight incline, the first of our operators fired an RPG-7 into it, and then another sergeant fired a second rocket into the vehicle behind it. Those of us in the killing group opened fire on both vehicles, which had crashed into the embankment bordering the road. We did not know at the time, but a third vehicle came along, and the first operator reloaded and fired another rocket into it. By that time, a sergeant and I had run down the road, shooting fleeing Zanla insurgents. We were shooting in pairs. The third vehicle nearly ran us down. It too careered into the bush, and I sprayed it with a long burst of fire. The alternate green and red tracer bullets from the weapon were a fearsome display of firepower. We call the RPD a rapid people destroyer, and it is difficult to fully appreciate the accuracy of that nickname unless you have witnessed the devastation it's capable of. The operation was exceptionally well executed, and I was amazed how calmly our officers and NCOs controlled and managed such near to perfect timing. The seasoned operatives were so unbelievably calm and organized. We later learned through intercepted radio reports and intelligence that we had killed 25 Zanla. I also remember that none of the enemy escaped the vehicle from where I was shooting. God only knows how many lay wounded. We were dressed in Renamo, Mozambican national resistance camouflage, and shouted out some of their slogans as we fled into darkness. A luta continua. The struggle continues. The Marxist Frelimo, Freedom Front of Mozambique forces were alerted, and we heard them firing randomly into the night sky as we walked away from the kill zone. We made camp, and I slept with one eye open. Early next morning, we quickly cut an LZ and called for uplift. 2 Bell helicopters arrived to fly us back from the relative safety to the relative safety at Grand Reef. Relief at the thumping sound of an incoming Huey's rotor blades is an incredible sensation and defies description. The closer it gets, the louder it gets, and the high gets higher. It's the best sound imaginable. Think your favorite musician performing at the Royal Albert Hall with the most incredible acoustics. The 2 choppers came in one by one. The pilots brought their choppers skillfully into the tight landing zones we had created and flew us at low level west, back over the Vumba Mountains to the sanctuary of Rhodesian airspace. That high feeling of watching the ineffective Frelimo army try and chase us was also an experience I shall never forget. It's kind of like, hey, we won that one, and we're coming back to do it again. During the debrief session back at Kabit Barracks a few days later, I listened to the officers who made a comment that I had jumped the gun and could have been killed by the third vehicle. It never makes sense to have to bring back a dead soldier from deep inside enemy territory. They made a perfectly good point, but I took it personally because of my dislike and rebuttal of personal criticism. I never realized at the time how good these guys really were. So stay tuned to the next part of the Rhodesian SAS, of my short time in that unit. Well, it was a long time actually. It went over 79 and 80, but it brings back dark memories. So stay tuned, Tug Morkel, and like, subscribe. Go to my website, tugmorkel.com. If you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, go and have a look at the website and perhaps drop us your email and see if there's anything that the professionals can help you with. I know it's not easy to talk about things, but as we mature and those distant memories seem to get further away, they are still here. They're still there in your dreams, in your subconscious, and indeed in your conscious. And there are ways to get around it. Trust me, I have worked through this for many, many years now. Cheers for now.